I spent months creating the perfect craft room with my husband, but his sister had a key and would come over while I was working to move everything around. She damaged my pottery projects and brought her own supplies to store in my space. I need to know if I handled this situation correctly because I'm starting to doubt myself. My husband thinks I was right, but his sister is making me feel like I'm the problem here. I'm Sarah, 28F, and my husband Jake, 30M, is a carpenter. We've been married for 3 years and live in a house that Jake renovated himself. About 6 months ago, I decided to turn our spare bedroom into a craft room. I do pottery, painting, and jewelry making as a hobby, and I'd been using the dining table for everything, which was getting messy and inconvenient. Jake was amazing about the whole project. He built custom shelving, installed proper lighting, and even created a ventilation system for my pottery wheel. We spent weeks planning every detail together. I wanted everything organized in a specific way so I could find my supplies easily. Jake understood this completely and helped me set up storage systems that made sense for my workflow. The room was finished about 4 months ago, and it became my sanctuary. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, so having a dedicated creative space where I could switch between digital and hands-on work was incredible. Everything had its place, and I could actually focus on my projects without constantly cleaning up or searching for materials. Here's where the problem starts. Jake's sister Lisa, 32F, has always been what I'd call pushy. She means well, I think, but she has opinions about everything and isn't shy about sharing them. When Jake and I first got together, she made several comments about how I dressed and what I ate. Jake would usually change the subject or make a joke to deflect, but he never directly told her to stop. Lisa lives about 20 minutes away with her husband and 2 kids. She works part-time at a doctor's office and has been doing crafts longer than I have. She started with scrapbooking when her kids were babies and has since moved into card making, cross-stitch, and some light woodworking. She's actually quite good at what she does. When she first saw my craft room, she seemed impressed. She walked around looking at everything and asked lots of questions about my setup. I was happy to show her around because I was proud of what Jake and I had accomplished. She particularly liked the pottery wheel and asked if I'd teach her someday. But then the visits started happening more frequently. Lisa would drop by when Jake was at work, claiming she was in the neighborhood or had some free time between errands. She has a key to our house because she watched our cat when we went on our honeymoon 2 years ago, and we never thought to ask for it back. At first, her visits seemed innocent enough. She'd come in, we'd chat for a bit, and she'd always end up in the craft room. She'd look through my supplies and ask about different techniques. I didn't mind sharing knowledge, and it was nice to have someone to talk crafts with. But then she started bringing things. The first time, she brought a small basket she thought would look nice on one of my shelves. It didn't match my organizational system at all, but I thanked her and put it somewhere out of the way. Then she brought a lamp that she said would give me better light for detail work. The problem was, Jake had already installed perfect lighting, and this lamp just cluttered up my workspace. I started to notice that during her visits, she would move things around. She'd reorganize my paintbrushes or rearrange my jewelry making supplies. When I'd find things in different places later, she'd say she was just trying to help me be more efficient or that she'd noticed I was having trouble finding things. This wasn't true. My system worked perfectly for me, and I knew exactly where everything was. Having my supplies moved around was actually making me less productive because I'd waste time looking for things that weren't where I'd left them. About 2 months ago, Lisa started bringing her own projects to work on in my craft room. She'd arrive with a bag full of scrapbooking supplies and spread them out on my work table. The first few times, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem unwelcoming. But it became a regular thing. She'd work on her projects while I worked on mine, and she'd talk constantly. I couldn't concentrate, and I found myself avoiding my own craft room when I knew she might show up. The situation got worse when she started leaving her supplies in my room. She'd finish working on something, pack up most of her materials, but leave behind items she said I might find useful. My carefully organized space started to fill up with her leftover papers, stickers, and tools that didn't belong to my crafts at all. Last month, she did something that really bothered me. I had been working on a series of ceramic bowls for a local gallery that was considering featuring my work. I had them arranged on a specific shelf to dry properly, with careful spacing between each piece. When I came into the room after one of her visits, she had moved all my bowls to make room for a display of her finished scrapbook pages. She'd pushed my bowls together, and 2 of them had been damaged where they touched while the clay was still soft. When I called her about it, she apologized but said she thought they were finished pieces and that she was just trying to showcase both our work. She offered to help me fix the damaged bowls, which missed the point entirely. I had to start those pieces over, and I lost a week of work. I talked to Jake about the situation that night. He listened to everything and said he'd talked to his sister about respecting my space. But when I asked him what he'd said to her afterward, he just mentioned that he told her to be more careful with my projects. He hadn't addressed the bigger issue of her taking over my craft room. 2 weeks ago, everything came to a head. I was having a particularly stressful day with work deadlines, and I went to my craft room to unwind with some pottery. When I opened the door, Lisa was there rearranging my entire paint station. She'd taken down all my color-organized tubes and was sorting them by brand instead. There were paint tubes everywhere, and she'd also brought in a new storage cart that didn't fit with my setup at all. She looked up when I came in and said she'd noticed my paint organization wasn't very logical and thought she'd fix it for me as a surprise. She said the new cart would give me much more storage space and that I'd thank her once I saw how much better the new system worked. I stood there for a moment, watching her handle my expensive art supplies, and something inside me snapped. I told her to stop what she was doing and leave my craft room immediately. She looked shocked and said she was just trying to help. I repeated that I wanted her to leave, and she started gathering her things with a hurt expression on her face. Before she left, she said that I was being ungrateful and that she'd spent her own time and money trying to make my space better. She said I clearly didn't appreciate having someone who cared enough to help me improve my organization and that maybe she'd been wrong about me being a real crafter. After she left, I called Jake at work and told him what had happened. He sighed and said he'd handle it. When he got home that evening, he said he'd talked to Lisa and that she was upset but understood she'd overstepped. He said she probably wouldn't be coming by as much anymore. But I haven't heard from Lisa at all since then, and Jake mentioned that she'd been complaining to their parents about how I treated her. Apparently, she's been telling people that I kicked her out for trying to help and that I'm not the supportive sister-in-law she thought I was. Now I'm second-guessing myself. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have been more direct about my boundaries earlier instead of letting things build up. Jake says I had every right to protect my space and that his sister needed to learn respect, but I can see that this situation is causing tension in his family. The craft room is finally back to the way I had it organized, and I can work peacefully again. But I keep wondering if there was a better way to handle this situation. Lisa clearly thought she was being helpful, even if her methods were completely wrong for me. I changed the locks on our house last week, which felt a bit extreme, but I needed to know that my space would stay the way I arranged it. Jake supported this decision and said it was probably something we should have done earlier anyway. So was I wrong to kick Lisa out of my craft room? Should I have found a gentler way to establish boundaries, or was being direct the only way to get through to her? Update 1: I wanted to update everyone on what happened after my original post about Lisa taking over my craft room. Thank you to everyone who commented and reassured me that I wasn't being unreasonable. Your responses helped me realize that I've been way too patient with the situation. After I posted, things were quiet for about a week. Lisa didn't come by, and Jake said she hadn't mentioned anything to him about the craft room incident. I started to think maybe the problem had resolved itself and that she'd finally understood the boundaries. Then Jake's mom called me. She said she wanted to have lunch and catch up, which was unusual because we don't typically hang out one-on-one. But I figured it might be nice to spend some time with her, so I agreed to meet her at a restaurant near her house. The lunch started normally enough. We talked about work, the weather, and some family news. But then she brought up Lisa. She said that Lisa had been really hurt by what happened in my craft room and that she felt I'd been unfair to her. According to Jake's mom, Lisa had only been trying to bond with me and share her crafting experience. Jake's mom asked if I'd consider apologizing to Lisa and maybe inviting her over to work on a project together. She said that Lisa had been looking forward to our crafting sessions and felt rejected when I asked her to leave. She also mentioned that Lisa had put a lot of thought into the organizational changes she'd suggested for my room. I tried to explain my side of the situation. I told her about how Lisa had been moving my things around without asking, how she'd damaged my pottery, and how she'd taken over my workspace without considering that I had my own system that worked for me. But Jake's mom seemed to think these were minor issues that could have been solved with better communication. She said that Lisa was a very experienced crafter and that I should have been more open to her suggestions. She pointed out that Lisa had been doing crafts for years before I started and that her organizational ideas came from genuine experience. She also said that families should support each other's hobbies and that Lisa had been excited to have someone to share her passion with. The conversation made me uncomfortable, but I tried to stay polite. I said I'd think about what she'd said, but I also explained that my craft room was important to me as a personal space where I could work without interruption. Jake's mom seemed to understand this, and we moved on to other topics. But when I got home and told Jake about the lunch, he looked concerned. He asked me exactly what his mom had said and whether she'd pressured me to apologize. When I told him about the conversation, he got quiet for a moment and then said there was something he needed to tell me. Apparently, Lisa had been talking to everyone in Jake's family about our situation. But she hadn't been telling them the truth about what had happened. According to Jake, Lisa had been saying that I'd yelled at her and thrown her out of the house for trying to help organize my craft supplies. She'd told people that I'd been rude and hostile from the moment she'd started visiting and that I'd never appreciated any of her contributions to my craft room. Jake said his mom, dad, and younger brother had all heard Lisa's version of events and that they'd been talking about how I might be having adjustment issues with joining the family. Lisa had apparently suggested that I was having trouble accepting help and that I might be feeling threatened by her experience with crafts. This was completely different from what had actually happened. Yes, I'd been firm when I asked her to leave, but I hadn't yelled at her or been hostile. And I certainly hadn't thrown her out of the house. I'd asked her to leave my craft room after she'd reorganized my paint supplies without permission, which seemed like a reasonable response to me. Jake was angry about his sister's lies, and he said he was going to set the record straight with his family. But first, he wanted to talk to Lisa directly and find out why she'd been spreading false information about me. The next day, Jake called Lisa and asked her to come over so they could discuss what had happened. She agreed, probably thinking that he was going to ask me to apologize. When she arrived, Jake sat her down in the living room and told her he knew she'd been misrepresenting the craft room incident to their family. Lisa immediately became defensive. She said she hadn't lied about anything and that she'd only told people how I'd made her feel. She claimed that even though I hadn't technically yelled, my tone had been harsh and unwelcoming. She said the way I'd asked her to leave had made her feel like she wasn't wanted in our house at all. Jake asked her to explain why she'd been reorganizing my craft room without asking permission. Lisa said she'd thought I'd appreciate the help and that she'd noticed my organization system wasn't very efficient. She said she'd been trying to share her knowledge and experience to help me become a better crafter. This is where things got interesting. Jake asked Lisa to be more specific about what she'd been trying to improve in my craft room. As she started describing her changes, it became clear that she'd been trying to set up my space to work better for her own projects, not mine. The paint organization she'd changed was actually better suited for scrapbooking, where you might need to access many different colors quickly, rather than pottery and painting, where I typically work with a more limited palette per project. The storage cart she'd brought was designed for paper crafts, not for the heavier ceramics and paints I use. Jake pointed out these discrepancies to Lisa, and she admitted that she'd been hoping we could work on more projects together in the future. She said she'd thought that if my craft room was set up in a way that accommodated both our crafting styles, we could spend more time bonding over shared projects. But then Jake asked her why she hadn't discussed any of this with me first. Why hadn't she asked if I wanted to collaborate on projects or if I'd be interested in modifying my workspace? Lisa got quiet and finally admitted that she'd been worried I'd say no. She said she'd been excited to have another crafter in the family, but she'd gotten the impression that I preferred to work alone. She thought that if she could just show me how much better things could be with her organizational system and project ideas, I'd naturally want to work with her more often. Jake told Lisa that what she'd done was manipulate the situation instead of communicating honestly. He said that by changing my space without permission and then lying to their family about my reaction, she damaged any chance of us developing a genuine friendship around crafting. Lisa started to cry and said she'd never meant for things to get so complicated. She said she just wanted to be included and that she'd felt left out when Jake and I had worked together on setting up the craft room. She'd been hoping that by contributing to the space, she'd become part of our creative partnership. I actually felt bad for her when Jake told me about this conversation. It was clear that Lisa had been feeling excluded and had handled her feelings in completely the wrong way. But I also realized that her behavior had been more calculated than I'd originally thought. She hadn't just been trying to help, she'd been trying to establish a permanent presence in my craft room. Jake told Lisa that she needed to apologize to me for lying to their family and for reorganizing my space without permission. He also said that if she wanted to work on crafts together in the future, she needed to ask me directly instead of trying to manipulate the situation. Lisa agreed to apologize, but she asked if she could do it in writing because she was embarrassed about how things had turned out. Jake said that was fine, but that she also needed to correct the false information she'd given to their parents and brother. 2 days later, I received a long text message from Lisa. She apologized for moving my craft supplies around and for not asking permission before making changes to my room. She also admitted that she'd been unfair in how she described our conflict to Jake's family and said she'd talked to them about what had really happened. But the apology felt incomplete to me. She focused on how sorry she was that I'd been upset, rather than acknowledging that her actions had been wrong regardless of my reaction. She also suggested that maybe we could start fresh and work on a small project together to rebuild our relationship. I showed the text to Jake, and he agreed that it wasn't really taking full responsibility. He said he'd talk to Lisa again if I wanted him to, but I decided to let it go for now. I was more interested in seeing whether she'd actually correct the false information she'd spread to his family. That's where things stand now. I haven't heard from Jake's parents or brother since my lunch with his mom, so I don't know if Lisa has talked to them yet. Jake says his family relationships feel a bit tense right now, but he's confident that things will settle down once everyone knows the truth. I'm still using my craft room peacefully, and I'm glad I stood up for my boundaries. But I'm also sad that the situation got so complicated when it could have been resolved with honest communication from the beginning. Update 2: Another update on the Lisa craft room situation. Things have taken some unexpected turns, and I wanted to share what's been happening. After my last update, Lisa did talk to Jake's family about what had really happened in my craft room. Jake's mom called me a few days later to apologize for the lunch conversation where she'd pressured me to make up with Lisa. She said she hadn't realized the full extent of what Lisa had been doing in my craft room and that she understood why I'd been upset. Jake's dad and brother also reached out to apologize for believing Lisa's version of events without hearing my side. The family seemed to be getting back to normal, and I thought the drama was finally over. But about 3 weeks ago, Jake came home from work with a strange expression on his face. He said his coworker had mentioned seeing Lisa at the craft store downtown, and she'd apparently been telling people there that she was helping to organize craft classes in our home. According to the coworker, Lisa had been asking about bulk supplies for group projects and had mentioned something about converting our spare bedroom into a community craft space. This was completely untrue. We'd never discussed having craft classes in our house, and Lisa definitely wasn't involved in organizing anything like that. Jake and I were both confused about why she'd be spreading this information, so he decided to call her and ask what was going on. When Jake called Lisa, she acted like she didn't know what he was talking about at first. But when he pressed her about the craft store conversation, she admitted that she'd been thinking about some ideas for bringing crafters together in the community. She said she'd mentioned our house as a possible location because we had such a nice setup, but she claimed she hadn't committed to anything definite. Jake told her that she couldn't use our house for craft classes without discussing it with us first, and he asked her to stop telling people that she was organizing anything in our home. Lisa agreed, but she seemed disappointed that we weren't interested in her community craft idea. I thought that would be the end of it, but then something weird happened. Last week, I was working in my craft room when I heard a car pull into our driveway. I looked out the window and saw a woman I didn't recognize getting out of a sedan with a bag of craft supplies. She came to the front door and knocked. When I answered, she introduced herself as Jennifer and said she was there for the pottery class. She said Lisa had given her our address and told her that classes started at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays. I had to explain to this poor woman that there were no pottery classes at our house and that Lisa had given her incorrect information. Jennifer looked confused and showed me a text message thread with Lisa where they discussed the classes and the address. In the messages, Lisa had described my craft room setup and had even mentioned that I was an experienced potter who would be teaching the class. Jennifer was understanding about the mix-up, but she was obviously disappointed. She'd arranged her work schedule to attend the class and had been looking forward to learning pottery. I felt terrible for her and ended up giving her the contact information for a real pottery studio across town that offers beginner classes. After Jennifer left, I immediately called Jake at work and told him what had happened. He was furious. He called Lisa right away and asked her to explain why she'd been scheduling pottery classes in our house without our knowledge or permission. Lisa's explanation was that she'd been trying to surprise me with a way to monetize my pottery skills. She said she'd noticed that I'd been working on pieces for the local gallery and thought I might be interested in teaching as a way to earn extra income. She'd apparently been talking to people at the craft store about gauging interest in pottery classes, and when several people expressed enthusiasm, she decided to set up a trial class to see how it went. She claimed she'd been planning to talk to me about it before the actual class happened, but she'd wanted to have everything organized first so she could present it as a complete opportunity. She said she thought I'd be excited about the chance to share my pottery knowledge and make some money at the same time. Jake pointed out that Lisa had made commitments to people without having any authority to do so, and that she'd used our home address without our permission. He told her she needed to contact everyone she'd promised classes to and explain that the classes weren't actually happening. Lisa got defensive and said she'd been trying to do something nice for me and that she didn't understand why we were always so negative about her ideas. She said that other families would be grateful to have someone thinking creatively about income opportunities, and that maybe we were too closed-minded to appreciate her entrepreneurial thinking. This attitude really bothered Jake. He told Lisa that her pattern of making decisions about our house and my craft room without consulting us had to stop completely. He said that if she couldn't respect our boundaries, she wouldn't be welcome to visit our house anymore. Lisa started crying and said that she felt like we were pushing her out of the family. She said she'd only been trying to help and that she didn't understand why everything she did was wrong. Jake told her that the problem wasn't her desire to help, but her method of making decisions for us without including us in the process. After Jake hung up with Lisa, we talked about how to handle the situation going forward. We realized that Lisa had been treating my craft room and our house like they were partially hers to manage, and that she'd been making plans involving our property without any regard for our privacy or autonomy. Jake decided to talk to his parents about Lisa's behavior pattern. When he explained the pottery class situation to them, they were shocked. Jake's mom said she'd had no idea that Lisa had been making these kinds of commitments involving our house, and she agreed that Lisa's behavior was inappropriate. Jake's dad suggested that the family have a group conversation with Lisa about boundaries and respect. He said that Lisa might not realize how her actions were affecting us, and that a family discussion might help her understand the impact of her behavior. But Jake wasn't sure that Lisa would be receptive to a group conversation. He pointed out that she'd been defensive and tearful in their phone call, and that she seemed to view herself as a victim in the situation rather than acknowledging her role in creating the problems. We decided to wait and see if Lisa would follow through on contacting the people she'd promised pottery classes to. Jake told her she had until the end of the week to clean up the mess she'd created, or he'd start calling people himself to explain that the classes weren't authorized. It's been 4 days since the conversation, and we haven't heard anything from Lisa about whether she's contacted the people who were expecting pottery classes. Jake's planning to call her tomorrow to check in, and if she hasn't handled the situation, he's going to start making calls himself. I've been thinking about whether there's any way to salvage a relationship with Lisa, but I'm starting to realize that her behavior pattern might be more deeply ingrained than I originally thought. She seems to have trouble understanding that other people's homes and projects aren't hers to manage, even when the boundaries are clearly explained to her. The craft room is still my peaceful sanctuary, and I'm grateful that Jake has been so supportive throughout this whole situation. But I'm also sad that what started as a simple boundary issue has turned into such a complicated family drama. I'll update again once we know how Lisa handles the pottery class situation and whether Jake's family conversation idea moves forward. Update 3 Final update on the Lisa craft room saga. This situation has come to a conclusion, though not the one I was hoping for. After my last update, Jake called Lisa to check whether she'd contacted the people who were expecting pottery classes at our house. She hadn't done it. She told Jake she'd been too embarrassed to call them and ask him to handle it instead since he was the one who was making such a big deal about the situation. Jake spent an entire evening calling people and explaining that there had been a misunderstanding about pottery classes. Most people were understanding, but a few were annoyed because they'd rearranged their schedules or made childcare arrangements to attend. One woman had even bought clay and tools specifically for the class. Lisa's refusal to clean up her own mess was the final straw for Jake. He told his parents that he was done trying to work things out with his sister and that she wouldn't be welcome at our house anymore. He said that her pattern of creating problems and then expecting other people to fix them was something he couldn't tolerate anymore. Jake's parents tried to convince him to give Lisa another chance. They said she was going through a difficult time and that her behavior might improve if she had more support from the family. But Jake pointed out that Lisa had been given multiple chances to respect our boundaries and had chosen to ignore them each time. About 2 weeks ago, Lisa showed up at our house unannounced. Jake was at work, and I was in my craft room working on a commission piece when I heard knocking at the front door. When I looked through the peephole, I saw Lisa standing there with several bags and what looked like craft supplies. I didn't answer the door. After about 5 minutes of knocking, Lisa walked around to the back of the house and tried the back door. When that was locked too, she sat down on our back porch and started unpacking her bags. I could see through the window that she'd brought scrapbooking supplies and what looked like materials for setting up a workspace. I called Jake at work and told him what was happening. He left his job site immediately and came home. When he arrived, Lisa was still on the back porch with her supplies spread out around her. She'd apparently been planning to work on projects outside until someone came home and let her in. Jake asked Lisa what she was doing at our house. She said she'd been thinking about our conversation regarding the pottery classes and had realized that maybe she'd been going about things the wrong way. She said she'd brought her own supplies so she could work on projects without touching anything in my craft room, and she thought we could craft together in a way that respected my boundaries. Jake told Lisa that she couldn't just show up at our house without being invited and that sitting on our porch with craft supplies wasn't respecting our boundaries. He asked her to pack up her things and leave. Lisa started crying and said that she felt like Jake was choosing me over his own family. She said that before Jake got married, they'd been close, and that she'd never had problems with any of his previous girlfriends. She accused me of turning Jake against her and said that I was trying to isolate him from his family. This was completely unfair. Jake's relationship with his sister had changed because of her behavior, not because of any influence from me. I'd actually encouraged Jake to try to work things out with Lisa multiple times, even when her actions were affecting me directly. Jake told Lisa that her behavior was the problem, not me. He listed all the things she'd done: reorganizing my craft room without permission, lying to their family about what had happened, scheduling pottery classes in our house without asking, and now showing up uninvited with craft supplies. He said that each of these actions showed a pattern of not respecting other people's boundaries or property. Lisa packed up her supplies and left, but not before telling Jake that he'd regret choosing his wife over his sister. She said that marriages don't always last, but family is forever, and that someday he'd realize what he'd given up. After Lisa left, Jake called his parents and told them what had happened. His mom said she'd talked to Lisa about her behavior, but she also asked Jake to consider that Lisa might be struggling with mental health issues and that cutting her off completely might not be the best approach. Jake said he wasn't cutting Lisa off forever, but that he needed to see consistent changes in her behavior before he'd be comfortable having her at our house again. He said that Lisa could still be part of family gatherings at his parents' house, but that our home was off limits until she learned to respect boundaries. Jake's parents accepted this compromise, though they weren't happy about it. Jake's mom said she hoped we'd reconsider eventually, and Jake's dad said he understood why we needed space from Lisa but that he hoped the family could heal from this situation. It's been 2 weeks since Lisa's last visit, and we haven't heard from her since. Jake's parents have mentioned her a few times in phone calls, but they haven't pressured us to reconcile with her. Jake's brother has been supportive of our decision and has said that he'd noticed Lisa's boundary issues in other situations as well. My craft room remains my peaceful workspace, and I'm finally able to use it without worrying about unwanted interruptions or reorganization. Jake installed a security system last week, partially because of the Lisa situation but also because we'd been meaning to upgrade our home security anyway. I do feel sad about how things turned out with Lisa. I think she genuinely wanted to connect with me through crafting, but her approach was so controlling and disrespectful that it destroyed any chance of building a real friendship. I wish she'd been able to understand that relationships can't be forced through manipulation and boundary violations. Jake has been amazing throughout this entire situation. He consistently supported me while also trying to maintain his family relationships, and he never made me feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting to protect my personal space. I know it wasn't easy for him to set firm boundaries with his sister, but he recognized that Lisa's behavior was affecting our marriage and our home. The craft room project that started all of this has been incredibly successful. I've sold several pieces through the local gallery, and I've been able to take on more commission work because I have a dedicated space where I can focus. Sometimes I think about how different things might have been if Lisa had simply asked to learn pottery or suggested we work on a project together instead of trying to take over my space. But that's not what happened, and I've learned that some people can't or won't respect boundaries no matter how clearly they're communicated. Lisa had multiple opportunities to change her approach, and she chose to escalate the situation instead of listening to our concerns. I hope Lisa eventually learns to respect other people's boundaries and property, both for her own sake and for her relationships with the rest of Jake's family. But that's not something I can control or fix. All I can do is protect my own space and peace of mind, which is exactly what I've done. The craft room is mine again, and that's how it's staying. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. We decided to live independently after marriage, but my controlling mill spread lies about me stealing her son. So we canceled our big ceremony. I'm Zoe, 25F, and I've been engaged to my boyfriend Ryan, 27M, for about 6 months now. We've been together for 4 years and have lived together in our own apartment for the last 3 years. We're both really excited about our upcoming wedding, which is scheduled for next month. Ryan and I met during our college days. We were both part of the same study group for our economics class. I remember being drawn to his quick wit and infectious laugh. We started as friends, often grabbing coffee after study sessions, but it didn't take long for us to realize there was something more between us. Our first date was at a local pizza place, where we ended up talking for hours, long after we'd finished eating. Ryan comes from a very close-knit family. His parents, David, 53M, and Karen, 50F, own a successful local bakery that's been in the family for 3 generations. The bakery, Sweet Memories, is known throughout our town for its delicious pastries and warm, welcoming atmosphere. Ryan grew up helping out at the bakery, and some of his fondest childhood memories are of kneading dough with his dad or decorating cookies with his mom. They live in a large house that's been in their family for generations. It's a beautiful Victorian-style home with a wraparound porch and a big backyard where they often host family barbecues in the summer. Ryan has 2 siblings, an older sister, Megan, 29F, who's married with a 2-year-old daughter, and a younger brother, Martin, 24M, who's still in college studying business with plans to eventually take over the family bakery. When Ryan and I first started dating, I got along great with his family. Karen was always warm and welcoming, often inviting me over for Sunday dinners and teaching me some of her secret family recipes. I enjoyed spending time with them during holidays and family gatherings. I come from a smaller family, it's just me and my parents, who live a few hours away, so I love the bustling energy of Ryan's large extended family. I have fond memories of my first Thanksgiving with Ryan's family. Karen went all out, cooking a feast that could have fed an army. Everyone pitched in. Megan made her famous green bean casserole, Martin was in charge of mashing the potatoes, and Ryan and I were tasked with making the pumpkin pies. It was chaotic and loud, with cousins, aunts, and uncles all crammed into the house, but it was also filled with laughter and love. I remember thinking how lucky Ryan was to have grown up in such a warm, loving environment. However, things started to change when we announced our engagement. Ryan proposed on our 3-year anniversary. He took me back to the pizza place where we had our first date, but this time, he had arranged for the owner, a family friend, to spell out "Will you marry me?" in pepperoni on our pizza. It was cheesy, pun intended, but perfect for us. We were on cloud 9 and couldn't wait to share the news with our families. My parents were thrilled, immediately offering their congratulations and support. Ryan's family seemed happy too, at first. Karen hugged us both tightly, and David broke out a bottle of champagne to celebrate. But as the evening wore on, I started to notice some tension. Karen kept making comments about how excited she was to have me officially join the family, and how nice it would be to have us around all the time. It wasn't until a few days later that we realized what was going on. Ryan and I were having dinner with his parents when Karen casually mentioned that she was thinking of redecorating Ryan's old room for us. We were confused at first, but then it dawned on us, they were assuming we would move into their family home after getting married. This came as a complete shock to both of us. We had never discussed this with them and had always planned on continuing to live in our own place. When we told them about our plans to stay in our apartment, Karen especially seemed upset and disappointed. She couldn't understand why we wouldn't want to live with them, insisting that it made the most sense financially and for the sake of family closeness. At first, it was just subtle hints and comments about how nice it would be to have us living there. Karen would mention how lonely the house felt with just her and David, or how much easier it would be for us to save money if we didn't have to pay rent. But as the wedding got closer, the pressure intensified. Karen started talking about how she was preparing Ryan's old room for us, buying new curtains and bedding. She talked about how excited she was to have us there, to be able to have breakfast together every morning and family dinners every night. We tried to gently remind her that we had our own place, but she just brushed it off, saying things like, "Oh, you'll change your mind once you see how nice it'll be." Things came to a head last week when we had dinner at Ryan's parents' house. It was supposed to be a nice family dinner to discuss some wedding details. Megan and her husband were there with their daughter, and Martin had come home from college for the weekend. Everything seemed fine at first, with everyone cooing over Megan's daughter and talking about Martin's classes. But then Karen brought up the topic again, asking when we planned to move our things over. When we firmly told her that we weren't moving in, she got visibly upset. The room fell silent, and I could feel everyone's eyes on us. David tried to calm her down, but she went on a long rant about family values and how we were abandoning them. Karen accused us of being selfish, saying that families should stick together and that by choosing to live on our own, we were rejecting them. She brought up how Megan and her husband lived there, how it had always been the plan for all her children to live in the family home. She even went as far as to say that if we really loved them, we wouldn't even think of living elsewhere. Ryan tried to explain that we loved them but valued our independence and privacy. He talked about how we had built a life together in our apartment, how we had our routines and our own space. He assured them that we would still visit often and be involved in family activities, but that we felt it was important for us to have our own home as we started our married life. Karen then turned to me and accused me of turning Ryan against his family. She said I was selfish for wanting to keep him away from them, that I clearly didn't understand the importance of family. I was shocked and hurt by her words, as I had always tried to be respectful and kind to them. I had never once suggested to Ryan that we shouldn't live with his family. It had always been a mutual decision. The dinner ended on a really sour note, with Karen refusing to speak to us for the rest of the evening. As we were leaving, David pulled Ryan aside and told him that he needed to think about his priorities and that they were very disappointed in us. Ryan was visibly shaken by this, and the drive home was silent, both of us lost in our thoughts. Since then, we've been getting daily calls and messages from various family members, all trying to convince us to change our minds. Megan, who lives at home with her husband and daughter, called to tell us how great it is to have family support and how we're making a mistake. She talked about how helpful it was to have her parents around to help with the baby, and how much money they were saving by not having to pay rent. Even Martin, who's away at college, sent us a long text about how we're breaking their mother's heart. He said that Karen had called him crying, saying that she felt like she was losing her son. Martin pleaded with us to reconsider, saying that he was planning to move back home after college and that it would be great if we were all there together. Ryan is really torn up about this. He loves his family and hates disappointing them, but he also wants to start our married life together in our own space. He's always been close to his family, especially his mom. Growing up, he and Karen had a special bond. She was always the one he went to for advice or comfort. To have her so upset with him now is really taking a toll on him. I'm feeling guilty and stressed, wondering if I'm the cause of this family rift. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair for them to expect us to give up our independence just because it's what they want. I keep thinking back to all the plans Ryan and I have made for our future, how we've talked about eventually buying our own house, maybe getting a dog. None of those plans involved living with his parents. We're getting married in just a few weeks, and this whole situation is casting a shadow over what should be a happy time. Ryan's parents are threatening not to attend the wedding if we don't agree to move in with them. They say that if we go through with this decision, it's a clear sign that we don't value family, and they won't support our marriage. We're both stressed and unsure of how to handle this without completely alienating his family. Ryan has tried talking to his dad one-on-one, hoping he might be more reasonable, but David just keeps saying that Karen is heartbroken and that as a husband, he has to stand by her. I don't want to be the reason Ryan loses his relationship with his family, but I also don't want to start our marriage by giving in to their demands. We're both firm in our decision to live on our own, but the constant guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation are taking a toll on us. Ryan's been having trouble sleeping, and I can tell he's stressed all the time. We've talked about possibly postponing the wedding to give everyone time to calm down, but we've already put down non-refundable deposits and sent out invitations. Plus, it feels wrong to put our lives on hold because of this disagreement. I'm not sure what to do at this point. Should we stand our ground and risk damaging our relationship with Ryan's family? Or should we give in to keep the peace, even if it means sacrificing our independence? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Update 1. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and unfortunately, things have only gotten worse. Ryan and I decided to stand our ground and not give in to his family's demands to move in with them after the wedding. We thought that if we remained firm but respectful, they would eventually come around and accept our decision. We were wrong. Last weekend, we had a small engagement party planned with some close friends. We had invited Ryan's family, hoping it would be a chance to smooth things over. We spent days preparing for it, cleaning our apartment from top to bottom and cooking all of Ryan's family's favorite dishes. I even made Karen's famous apple pie, hoping it would be a peace offering of sorts. As the party time approached, we kept glancing at the door, hoping to see Ryan's family walk in. But as the hours ticked by, it became clear they weren't coming. None of them showed up. We later found out that Karen had organized a family dinner at the same time as our party, effectively forcing Ryan's siblings and extended family to choose sides. This really hurt Ryan. He had been trying to reach out to his parents and siblings all week, leaving voicemails and sending texts, but they either ignored him or sent short, cold responses. Seeing that they would go so far as to boycott our engagement party and turn the rest of the family against us was a huge blow. I remember the moment Ryan realized they weren't coming. He had been standing by the window, constantly checking the street. When our last guest arrived and there was still no sign of his family, I saw the hope drain from his face. He put on a brave face for our friends, but I could see how much he was hurting. The day after the party, Ryan's aunt, Karen's sister, called him. She told him that Karen had been telling everyone that I was manipulating Ryan, turning him against his family, and that I had explicitly forbidden him from having any contact with them. According to Karen, I was jealous of Ryan's close relationship with his family and was trying to isolate him from them. Of course, none of this was true. Ryan and I had always made decisions together, and I had always encouraged his relationship with his family. It was clear that Karen was trying to paint me as the villain in this situation, probably hoping that if everyone turned against me, Ryan would leave me and come back to the family fold. Ryan was furious when he heard this. I had never seen him so angry. He immediately called his parents' house, determined to set the record straight. Karen answered, and for the first time since this all began, Ryan lost his cool. He confronted her about the lies she was spreading and demanded to know why she was trying to turn the family against us. Karen burst into tears, accusing Ryan of choosing me over his real family and saying that he was breaking her heart. She brought up all the sacrifices she had made for him over the years, how she had always put her children first, how she had worked long hours at the bakery to provide for them, how she had always been there for him. She said that by refusing to live with them, Ryan was throwing all of that back in her face. David got on the phone and told Ryan that if he didn't come to his senses and agree to move in after the wedding, they would cut him off completely, emotionally and financially. Even though Ryan is financially independent, his parents had offered to pay for a significant portion of our wedding. Now, they were threatening to withdraw that support just 3 weeks before the ceremony. This threat hit us hard. We had planned our wedding counting on that financial support. Without it, we would struggle to pay for everything we had already booked and arranged. It felt like they were using their financial leverage to force us into compliance. We spent the next few days in a daze, trying to figure out what to do. We looked at our budget and realized that without his parents' contribution, we would have to either postpone the wedding or significantly scale it back. Ryan was torn between standing up for our decision and not wanting to hurt his family or ruin our wedding plans. I suggested we could take out a loan to cover the costs, but Ryan was hesitant to start our married life in debt. We considered asking my parents for help, but I knew they couldn't afford to contribute much more than they already were. We even briefly discussed giving in to Karen's demands, but we both knew that would be a disaster in the long run. After a lot of discussion and tears, we made a decision. We decided to cancel the big wedding we had planned and instead have a small, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends. It's not what we had originally envisioned, but we realized that starting our marriage on our own terms was more important than a lavish ceremony. Making those cancellation calls was heartbreaking. We had to let go of the beautiful venue we had booked, cancel the caterer, and tell the band they were no longer needed. Each call felt like we were chipping away at the dream wedding we had planned. But at the same time, there was a sense of relief. We were taking control of our situation, refusing to let Ryan's family's manipulation dictate our choices. We sent out messages to our guests explaining the change of plans. We were vague about the reasons, not wanting to air the family drama, but many of our friends figured out what was going on and have been incredibly supportive. Several of them offered to help with the new, smaller ceremony. One friend offered to officiate, another said she'd handle the flowers, and another offered to bake our cake. Ryan tried one last time to reach out to his family, sending them a heartfelt email explaining our decision and expressing his hope that they would still be a part of our lives. He poured his heart out in that email, telling them how much he loved them and how he hoped they could find a way to accept our decision. He reassured them that us living separately didn't mean we were cutting them out of our lives, and that we still wanted them to be a big part of our future. So far, we haven't received any response. As for me, I'm struggling with feelings of guilt and anger. I know I'm not really to blame for this situation, but it's hard not to feel responsible for the rift in Ryan's family. I keep wondering if there was something I could have said or done differently to prevent things from getting this bad. At the same time, I'm angry at how manipulative and cruel they're being, especially Karen. It hurts to see how much pain they're causing Ryan, and I'm finding it hard to imagine ever having a good relationship with them again, even if they do come around. Ryan is putting on a brave face, but I know he's hurting deeply. He's started seeing a therapist to help him process everything that's happening. I can see how conflicted he is. On one hand, he's angry at his family's behavior and sure of our decision, but on the other hand, he misses them terribly and feels guilty for disappointing them. There are moments when I catch him looking at old family photos with a sad expression, and it breaks my heart. We're trying to focus on our love for each other and the life we're building together, but it's hard when this dark cloud is hanging over us. We're both having trouble sleeping, and there's a tension between us that wasn't there before. We're not fighting, but there's a heaviness in our interactions, a sadness that we can't seem to shake. Our new, smaller wedding is in just 2 weeks. We're both anxious about whether Ryan's family will make any last-minute attempts to disrupt it or if they'll maintain their silence. We've warned the few friends who will be attending about the situation, just in case Karen or anyone else tries to show up and cause a scene. It's sad that we even have to consider these things for what should be the happiest day of our lives. Either way, we're determined to go through with it and start our married life together, with or without their blessing. We know it won't be easy, but we're committed to supporting each other through this difficult time. We're hoping that once we're married and they see that we're happy and doing well on our own, maybe they'll come around. But we're also preparing ourselves for the possibility that this estrangement might be long-term or even permanent. I never imagined that planning our wedding would be like this. Instead of choosing flowers and tasting cakes, we're strategizing how to handle potential family drama and mourning the loss of relationships we thought would last a lifetime. But through it all, Ryan and I have grown closer. We're facing this challenge as a team, and I know that whatever happens, we'll get through it together. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. Our small, intimate wedding ceremony took place 2 weeks ago, and while it wasn't what we originally planned, it turned out to be a beautiful and meaningful day. In the days leading up to the wedding, we braced ourselves for potential drama from Ryan's family. We had nightmares about Karen showing up and causing a scene, or about receiving a cease and desist letter from a lawyer. The stress was taking its toll on both of us. Ryan was losing weight and I was breaking out in stress-induced hives. To our surprise, we received a text from Megan, Ryan's sister, 2 days before the ceremony. She said she and her husband wanted to come to the wedding and that she was sorry for how things had escalated. We were cautiously optimistic and told her we'd be happy to have them there, but we also warned her that if this was some kind of ploy orchestrated by Karen, we wouldn't hesitate to ask them to leave. On the day of the wedding, Megan and her husband showed up. It was a bit awkward at first, but they seemed genuinely happy to be there. Ryan was emotional seeing his sister, and they had a long, private conversation before the ceremony. Megan explained that she had started to see how manipulative their mother was being and that she didn't agree with how Ryan was being treated. She said Martin, their younger brother, felt the same way but was afraid to go against their parents. Megan shared some details about what had been happening at home. Apparently, Karen had become increasingly erratic, oscillating between bouts of tears and fits of rage. She had been calling Ryan's childhood friends, telling them not to attend the wedding. She had even gone so far as to call my workplace, trying to convince my boss that I was unstable and should be fired. Thankfully, my boss knew me well enough to dismiss Karen's claims. However, Ryan's parents and younger brother were noticeably absent. We later found out that Karen had forbidden Martin from attending and had apparently thrown a fit when she learned Megan was going. Despite this, we tried not to let it overshadow our day. The ceremony itself was lovely. We held it in a small, picturesque park near our apartment. Our close friends rallied around us, helping with everything from setting up chairs to taking photos. The intimate setting allowed us to really feel the love and support of those present. Ryan was emotional during his vows, and I could tell he was thinking about his absent family members, but he also seemed more certain than ever about our decision to start our life together on our own terms. After the ceremony, we had a small reception at our favorite local restaurant. The owner, who knew about our situation, had closed the place to other customers and decorated it beautifully for us. It wasn't the grand reception we had originally planned, but it was perfect in its own way. We danced, laughed, and celebrated with the people who truly cared about us. After the wedding, we went on a short honeymoon. It was a much-needed break from all the drama, and it gave us time to reflect on everything that had happened and to start planning our future. We spent long hours talking about what we wanted our life together to look like, how we would handle future interactions with Ryan's family, and how we could build our own traditions and support system. When we returned, we found out that Karen had escalated her campaign against us. She had apparently been posting on social media about how her son had abandoned the family and how I had stolen him away. She shared old family photos with captions about how happy they used to be before I came along. Some extended family members and family friends had been reaching out to Ryan, concerned about what they were hearing. Ryan decided it was time to set the record straight. He wrote a long, detailed post explaining our side of the story, how we had always planned to live independently, how his parents had tried to manipulate us into moving in with them, and how they had ultimately chosen to cut us off when we didn't comply with their demands. He was respectful but firm, making it clear that while he loved his family, their behavior had been unacceptable. The response to Ryan's post was overwhelming. Many family friends and even some extended family members reached out to offer their support. They shared stories of how Karen had tried to control their lives too, and how they had struggled with setting boundaries with her. It was eye-opening for Ryan to realize that this wasn't just about us, but part of a larger pattern of behavior. Megan called us a few days after Ryan's post went up. She said that Karen was furious about the post and had been ranting about taking legal action for defamation. We're not too worried about that, as everything Ryan said was true, but it's still stressful to think about. On a more positive note, Megan said that Martin had read the post and it had really opened his eyes to the situation. He's still living at home while finishing college, so he's in a tough position, but he sent Ryan a supportive text. It meant a lot to Ryan to know that his siblings were starting to understand and support our position. As for David, Ryan's dad, we haven't heard anything directly from him. Megan told us that he's been very quiet about the whole situation and she thinks he might be starting to see how unreasonable Karen is being, but he hasn't taken any action to reach out or mend things with us. Ryan is doing better emotionally. He's sad about the situation with his parents, especially his mom, but he's also angry about how they behaved and more certain than ever that we made the right decision. He's continued seeing his therapist, which has been really helpful for him in processing all of these complex emotions. We're focusing on settling into our married life and making plans for our future. We've talked about possibly moving to a new city for a fresh start, away from all this drama. Nothing's decided yet, but it's something we're seriously considering. The idea of building a life somewhere new, where we're not constantly worried about running into Ryan's parents or dealing with the fallout from this situation, is appealing. For now, we're taking things one day at a time. We're grateful for the support we've received from friends and some family members, and we're committed to building a life together based on mutual respect and independence. It's not the start to married life we imagined, but we're facing it together, and that's what matters most. Update 3. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some significant developments in our situation. Shortly after my last post, we received an unexpected visit from David, Ryan's father. He came to our apartment one evening, looking tired and apologetic. He said he had finally stood up to Karen and told her that her behavior was unacceptable. Apparently, this led to a huge argument between them, and David had been staying with a friend for the past week. David apologized profusely for not intervening sooner and for allowing Karen's manipulative behavior to go on for so long. He admitted that he had always known it was wrong but had found it easier to go along with her demands than to confront her. Ryan was emotional during this conversation, expressing both his hurt at David's previous inaction and his appreciation for him finally taking a stand. We learned from David that Karen's behavior had been escalating. She had been calling and harassing our wedding guests who had attended our ceremony, accusing them of betraying the family. She had also shown up at Megan's house and created a scene when Megan refused to cut ties with us. This had apparently been the last straw for David. David told us that he was seriously considering separation from Karen if she didn't agree to seek professional help for her behavior. He asked for our forgiveness and expressed hope that we could rebuild our relationship, though he understood if we needed time. Ryan was cautiously optimistic about reconnecting with his father, but we both agreed that we needed to take things slow. We made it clear to David that while we appreciated his apology, we wouldn't consider any reconciliation with Karen unless she took responsibility for her actions and got help. A week after David's visit, we received a call from Martin. He told us that the situation at home had become unbearable. Karen's behavior had become increasingly erratic, and he no longer felt comfortable living there. He asked if he could stay with us for a while until he figured out his next steps. We agreed, happy to be able to support Ryan's younger brother. Having Martin stay with us has been a positive experience. He's opened up about the toxic environment at home and how Karen's controlling behavior had affected him throughout his life. It's been healing for Ryan to connect with his brother and to know that he's not alone in his experiences. As for Karen, we haven't had any direct contact with her. We've heard through Megan that she's still angry and blaming everyone else for the situation. David is proceeding with a trial separation and has encouraged her to seek therapy, but so far, she's refused. This whole experience has been a roller coaster of emotions, but Ryan and I feel stronger as a couple. We've had to navigate some really tough decisions and stand firm in our boundaries, which has ultimately brought us closer together. We've decided to put our plans to move to a new city on hold for now. With Martin staying with us and the possibility of rebuilding relationships with some family members, we feel it's important to stay nearby for the time being.